Episode 33 of the Siege Show, presented by Jake and Guzz. And it's reload time around the corner, Guzz. We've got ourselves another trip to Rio this time. Sao Paulo last time, so Brazil we go back to. It's a country that obviously we've got some good memories. It's been announced, of course, that we're going to be working the event. We leave in about three days or so from recording this episode. And obviously, we're very much excited. You should be even more excited because you actually get the opportunity to work in 2025. You haven't done anything since Montreal last year.
Yeah, I very much feel like the sort of non-affiliate teams at the moment, right? That will unfortunately be sitting back and watching this event, as I haven't been involved for quite some time. I think literally the last time I would have casted Siege would have actually been Montreal, right?
Yep.
I don't think
Semi-final.
I guess there was like the wrecked gauntlet, maybe, so like a bit of a casual one-dayer, but obviously nothing quite to the level of this. So yeah, getting back into the swing of things is going to be a challenge, and of course, new year, new game, plethora of roster changes. So very much being thrown into the deep end, but I'm sure it will be fun. Yeah,
I mean, as we kind of look to unwind for this episode a little bit, this is really like a new beginning when it comes to Rainbow Six Siege, which, there's a little hint of irony because the last time we were in Brazil, I said a moment on the call for the SI24 Grand Final. I was like, it's a new dawn. It's a new, like this is the beginning of a new era. I was 1 year early. And as we head back to Brazil, now it actually is very much like the beginning of a new era. We begin with Reload, which, in itself, a lot of people have had very much a mixed reception when it comes to this event and the format surrounding it. I think also just that, not even format wise, which we'll very much get into, it's also just the fact that, a lot of people have looked at this as like taking away from a major. And kind of the importance when it comes to that is when you have actual invite events such as this, right? All the partner teams getting essentially that kind of like free invite to the event. It takes away from that competitive nature of like qualifying and seeing teams, fight for their spot at an event. And I absolutely agree with the connotation that, it puts an asterisk on this event, right? You're coming into this where you haven't quite got all the teams that you might have at, say, a major because some teams are just invited in. I will say, though, that when you kind of look at the teams that we've got for this event, it's hard to not be excited. Like, yes, there's a couple that have certainly missed out because they're not a partner team that you would like to see there. But like the vast majority of teams that realistically you would want to see at a big major event are there. And so I don't really think it diminishes the event too much in that regard. I will say I hope this is kind of like a one-off and that we kind of just use this as a launch pad for Siege X and Siege moving forward.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just tinkering with my mic settings because I literally reinstalled Windows and we haven't done a podcast in a while, so just making sure everything's good. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of online discussion about this being classed as a bit of a Mickey Mouse event, and I think that a lot of those reasonings and justifications do make sense. We've entered an era, the Blast era, and we've tried to cultivate an ecosystem that's sort of a hybrid between closed and open qualifiers. We've seen that through regional leagues and teams being able to make runs and qualify for majors, etc., and SI points. And then we turn a page into 2025, I guess excluding SI, but entering the new calendar year, and we're straight off the bat, it's a invite-only event. Like, that just seems really weird and in contrast to the kind of ecosystem that we've been, calling out for. Now, there have been improvements in other areas, and I understand that they're trying to reward affiliate teams and introduce them to this event, etc. And so from that kind of perspective, it does make sense, but I could certainly empathize with fans that don't take this event all that seriously. It'd be interesting to see if the teams themselves even take it all that seriously and what kind of implications that may have. And of course, if your favorite player or team or organization aren't at the event and didn't have an opportunity to qualify for the event, I can understand why that would leave a sour taste in your mouth. So whilst I am excited for this event being on CJX, and I think some of the interesting ideas that they're introducing at this event could be okay, there could also be the case where in a couple of weeks' time, we look back and say that, yeah, it was a mid-event and we probably made it even worse by introducing some of these particular ideas. So a lot of it is still up in the air. I think it is a little bit too early to make judgment on if it is actually going to be a good event or not. We need to see it play out first, but there's an opportunity for it to be poor. I hope it's not, but it could be.
I think it's the kind of event, like the way that I'm looking going into it, especially as working talent for the event, I think this is actually the first event where I feel like there's a bit of, I wouldn't say expectation, but hope that the actual talent that are working this event can add some flavor and flair to it from a broadcast and viewership perspective. I think typically if you have a major or six invitational, we're just a cog in the wheel, right? Like we're just kind of there to help things go along. The main focus is the players, the teams, and the competitive nature of Siege. But for an event like this, where clearly it's a little bit more showcasey, you've got partner teams, there's some weird systems in place, there's clearly an element to it that's about this more fun, engaging nature of saying, we're going to kickstart Siege X and the new era of Siege with this hopefully one-off, event. That I think from like a talent perspective, I really want to come into this and try and have some fun. I really want to see not just yourself and I, but also all the talent, analysts, hosts, and the other casters, maybe even experiment a little bit, not like as in changing up duos. I hope that's done forever now, but I think just trying to add some different flavor, try some different things, see does this work if we have a little bit more fun here? What if we go a little bit more of a Counter-Strike casting route where we don't have to scream and yell all that much, all these kind of things, right? So I think that we can kind of look at this as an event where it's like, hey, let's kind of tinker with some things, have some fun with it. Clearly, you'd be an idiot to think that this is not on par with a major or an SI in terms of that competitiveness. Immediately, that's scrapped once you're on partner teams only. Then you add in the format with wagering and 1v1s and cards and whatever else that they've concocted up in the workshop behind the scenes. Which again, I don't want to critique it too much because we haven't seen it. I'm more than happy to critique it once we've seen it. If we come back from Brazil and it just didn't work, I'll say it didn't work. And if it was shit, it was shit. I got no qualms in that. I think that's just public acknowledgement. And we're not shills. We've always kind of tried to, show that on the podcast, that we're happy to just give our raw feedback. What you see is what you get. I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out, but I also don't want to come into this as a doomsday, super negative thoughts immediately off the bat, just off the rip, being like, nah, this looks like shit. This is crap. This is like, what is this? Because I think it takes guts and balls to actually experiment. That's where I kind of give a little bit of kudos to Ubisoft and Blast for saying, you know what, let's try and mix things up a little bit. This is the event that you actually try and mix things up. This is a partner invite only. It's clearly designed as a Siege X launcher, and let's try and have some fun with it. And I don't hate that idea. We'll see if it works. It might not. And obviously, none of this is going to become part of the main ecosystem of Rainbow Six Esports. Everyone knows that. This is not going to be at the next major. It's not going to be at SI. And you're not going to see any elements of this ever again unless there's another reload next year or whatever. And so therefore have some fun with it. Try and have some fun. At the end of the day, as much as we like the competitive nature of esports, there needs to be that fun element. And I think that that's where we can maybe get some of this, while also kind of exploring the boundaries of what is Siege X and what it does now bring to Siege. That's going to be the other part of it. Like we're essentially not playing a whole new game, but a new version of Siege is being introduced to the esports ecosystem for the first time. So definitely excited. Is there like any particular part of the reload format that you kind of want to touch on, talk about, gauge your interest when you first saw it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll back on your point there and say that, I don't really have too many issues in terms of experimentation and trying new things, with the caveat that it being at the expense of a major entirely instead of in addition. That's where it starts to get a little bit If this was simply a one-off Siege X intro event, post-SI, pre-stage 1, and then we still had the regular major format, whenever they would have taken place because the calendar shifted, I don't think there would have been probably as many complaints, and I probably would have sat better with me as well. But the fact that it is in exchange for a major,
I feel
now
that
we're only getting November, that's where it starts to feel a little bit iffy. Now, in terms of the actual format itself, I don't think we probably want to bore ourselves too much in the details of this podcast. And unfortunately, that is because of how complex and complicated this format is. We're still trying to wrap our heads around it. There are still questions going around in terms of talent discourse, etc., to get clarification, because ultimately we're the ones that need to know it the best in able to convey that to the audience. I mean, I'm calling it now, and I will probably be the first person to do it. We'll make mistakes in interpreting this format and explaining it to viewers. It is incredibly complex. There's a lot of moving parts, the cards, the bullets, the wagering systems, dueling, etc. There are so many moving parts. Keeping track of that and conveying that not only correctly, but also in a way that people can understand is so challenging. I think that taking a step back, the fundamental idea of a format that has, we're going to say wagering on the podcast. We can't say that on broadcast because of the gambling implications, but we'll say it here. Having a wagering format where you can put something on the line and a lower ranked team can challenge their choice of a higher ranked team, that kind of bounty/wagering system, which Blast ironically did use in a CS event not too long ago, I think in its raw form is actually pretty cool and exciting format, especially for a more showcasey event like this. I don't think that is inherently too much of a problem. The context in the CS version, they did it with cash and it had prize pool implications, whereas here the prize pool is set because we go into a regular bracket for the live portion. This is simply for the group stage in terms of ranking those teams. I think it was a pretty cool idea, and from what I can understand, it worked out pretty well. Siege takes it another step further, though, adding a bunch of modifiers.
Yeah. Well, do you think it's just too much being added at once? Like, it's fun to have some shenanigans, but it's just too much.
That would probably be my estimation. I don't really understand why we had to go from 0 to 1,000 instead of maybe taking a baby step. And maybe it could have been a smaller build on what Blast did on the CS event and maybe add some kind of exciting modifier. But adding, I think it's 6 cards total, right? On top of that, with the wagering system and abilities to like get back in even if you're knocked out with the duel round 3, like all that crazy shit. Again, might be fine, might play out okay, and people might understand it, but I am very skeptical that it's going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be really rough, and just throwing it all out there first time is a big risk.
Yeah, and I think the other part of all of this as well is it's kind of difficult to use an event such as this to attract new viewers because this is not going to be...
They're not going to know what the fuck is going on.
Well, regardless if they know what the fuck's going on, if this is something that's obviously not going to then translate to a major, then to an SI, it's a format that is essentially a one and done, unless, again, this reload thing continues. It means that if someone comes in and they like this, they're not getting this again unless there's another reload next year onwards.
That's the other thing, yeah.
So, like, you're not really gaining the capture of a new audience off of the format. You might gain, say, some new audience members as they get introduced to Siege and then kind of like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then, like, they see what Siege is really all about. Absolutely. But yeah, I think a really good sentiment to kind of look at this event is maybe a little too much at once. I agree. I think the wagering thing can certainly be done right. I will say, from memory, I don't think it was overly perceived positively from the Counter-Strike version either. I think that some people were a bit like on the fence on it, where it was like, oh, it's not too bad, but it maybe didn't work. And I think if I recall, I mean, because like the way that they did it in Counter-Strike was like, if you were the top team, let's say G2 at the time, was at that time, I think they were actually the top team at the time, when Monacy, Nico, etc. And let's say it was like 25, 30k or something if you beat them. And then, like, let's say you were a FlyQuest who was like last and it was like 2k to beat them. FlyQuest have to look at it as like, do we want to take a random stab at G2, which we probably can't beat? Or do we just grab the team that's 17th or whatever and then we'll get 2k? Like, it doesn't really work when you think about it. It's like, imagine I'm playing a basketball tournament and it's like, I can go and play LeBron James. And if I beat him in a one-on-one, I get like 2 million. Or if I play you, I get like $100. Realistically, I'm better off playing you for the $100 than I am LeBron James for the 2 million because I'm never beating him. So that's kind of like my issue with the wagering system when it's done in that fashion. But I do agree. I think it's a system that could be seen without money or whatever. That you could, there's something there. There's something there that if you do it and you do it right, you know, you could have some fun with it.
It has potential for some interesting grudge matches and rivalries, etc. Again, with all the roster changes and the stakes of the event, I don't really know how much teams and players are going to lean into that. I mean, we could see that develop over the course of the group stage, right? Maybe there'll be some smack on Twitter or some shit, and like a team will want to challenge another team. Like that will be a fun natural
I
storyline.
don't like the 1v1s. I don't like the cards.
All the modifiers just risk muddying it and making it really complicated. And there's going to be errors. There's going to be errors from talent. I'll put my hand up and say I will probably be the first person to fuck up. And I feel for the admin team as well. Tracking all of this is going to be so
and the viewers.
difficult.
I mean, I think for the viewers as well.
Ultimately, is the viewers the most important people, and they're going to find it hard.
I think that's the biggest thing that, as I speak a little candidly here, at the end of the day, sometimes as talent, we're all egotistical and we all think that we play a large part in this. We really don't. And even the players themselves, the players also need to, I think obviously a lot of the players probably do understand this, that they can't do this if it's not for the viewers. We can't do this if it's not for the viewers. None of this can happen if it's not for the viewers. So at the end of the day, the most important people when it comes to Siege Esports, you guys, the people watching this, the people watching Siege Esports, is the only reason why it's functioning, for the players, for the talent, for the admins, for everyone involved. And so you have to always think, okay, if I was kind of building a product, my first instinct is, what can we do that's best for the viewers? What do the viewers want? And is it bringing in partner teams, adding in bullets and cards and wagering systems? Probably not. But again, if this is a one-off, and I really hope it is, I have no idea if it isn't or it isn't. As our previous podcast, I have never been part of the CJX
You don't know anything.
I don't know a thing. Is if it is a one-off and it is a Siege X launch, I think as the viewers, I would hope, and this is the way I would probably react if I was a viewer, it's I can kind of forgive that. It's a one-off. Bring the major back next year. Goodwill is restored. We're all fine. But if this ends up being something that, as you've alluded to, and a lot of people on Reddit and Twitter have alluded to, if this replaces a major permanently, I think there will be backlash. I genuinely believe that, and I think it could hurt the ecosystem. As a one-off to launch CHX, that's fine. And again, it's then and because of that, and if they do it like that, it's the only way I can kind of accept the cards, the bullets, the wagering, all of that, because then at least it's a for fun one-off, then whatever. But from what I know, I don't think it's been said whether or not it's a one-off or if it's a continuing event. So we just don't know. None of us know. But we'll see what happens. And again, I do want to save my overall criticism until after the event. I think that should be, if you want to have your early opinion and say it's shit, it's replaced the major, I'm not going to watch it, Mickey Mouse, all of that, by all means, go ahead. For me personally, I'm just going to save the critique and the criticism until after the event. I'm genuinely curious to see how it's going to play out. That adds to the excitement. We've got a lot of top teams. Still, $500,000 on the line. I think it's still going to be a really, really good event. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We get to see Siege X for the first time at the esport level. So there's a lot of things that you really should be looking forward to for this event. Don't get too clouded or down a negative based on the systems employed for Reload. There is still a lot that you should be excited about. Look at it as a way to kind of kickstart the year. Look at it as a way to kind of kickstart Siege X. Have some fun with it. And then we'll all kind of move on. Stage 1 begins and off we go. And that's kind of my view overall on the tournament. I'm excited for it. I'm skeptical, but I'm excited. I think we can probably leave it there, and then we'll circle back on the calendar. We'll circle back when we get back from Rio. We will dissect the hell out of we will dissect the hell out of the tournament. And you know what? I reckon we'll get back home and we'll be like, you know what? This worked. This didn't work. This was okay. Didn't like this. And I think that's probably my expectation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going in with a somewhat open mindset. I feel like I'm probably the one, at least in our Discord, that's been trying to champion this format as much as possible. I am a little bit concerned, definitely, about the levels of complexity, but if
we are the least chill people you will ever meet as well. Even the way, we are literally about to fly out to work this event and we're questioning it. That's as brazen and bold as you can kind of get. But again, it's the honesty aspect. These are the same things I would say to internal people as well. There's no difference. I mean, at the end of the day, right, I kind of look at it, does it come from a good place? Do we want to see Siege and Blast and Ubisoft and all the talent, the players, the viewers, exceed expectations and continue to improve? Yes. So if it comes from that good place and it comes with the right attitude, I have no issue questioning these kind of things and hoping it works out. I would love nothing more than this event ends up being super fun. Things kind of worked out. The systems made it fun and engaging. But as long as it doesn't become obviously mainstream, which absolutely won't. So because of that, I'm going to go into it with a good open mind, have some fun with it, and then we'll dissect it when we get back. So roster moves. This is actually kind of big because we haven't. I was saying to this actually before we kind of started recording a little bit, guys, was like, is this the biggest roster shakeup we've had in Siege for a very long time? If you think about the landscape change with the time frames, usually we would finish 6 Invitational and then like a month later we're starting stage 1, and like you don't get a lot of time to go and make these like massive roster moves. Usually it's like mid-year, but mid-year you don't really want to shake things up between like stage 1, stage 2, SI point implications. This really is like, hey, we've just finished SI. We've got a couple of months until, well, really, you've got multiple months until stage 1, right? Because, like, even though we're going to reload, like, teams that are not partner teams, like, have still got, like, another month or so. I mean, the qualifiers and stuff as well, but you get my point. So, is this the biggest shakeup we've seen?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had the sort of dubious imports in APAC. We've had a couple of org shuffles in the likes of NA EU, some interesting roster moves over in Brazil. So all around the world, there's been a bunch of changes. And I feel like for the longest part of my off season, at least, I've been pretty zoned out from Reddit and X for the most part, but trying to keep tabs on it. And it's been tough. That there's been a massive volume of changes. And with Reload only being the invited teams, we really haven't seen all of them actually play out inside of the server. I know there's been some qual stuff in terms of APAC and tier 2 and other regions, etc. But quite a few of those notable changes we aren't going to see until that first stage actually begins. So when we kind of prepared for this episode, I did just list a couple of those key changes, and we can talk about them point by point a little bit more in depth in terms of the ones that at least we are personally most excited to see play out, or the ones that we see as being the most interesting that will play out at Reload. And top of the list, and I'm sure he'll love the fact that he's at the top of the list, Fabian has moved over to M80. The PSG Talon project did not work out. Hashed up M80 have swooped him up and bought him out, I presume, from his contract. I don't know if it had expired or if he did get bought out. And that's going to be a super intriguing squad. Of course, Spoit now no longer on the team, but the roster itself looks strong. And Fabian, again, I mean, we don't have to go into too much depth, but a lot of experience at the highest level. Is his approach going to work in this region? That's probably my biggest question in terms of, player relations and meta. But yeah, they could come out of the gates absolutely firing at this event, or maybe it's going to take them time to adjust to the system. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah,
I mean, can I just say though, as well with Fabian, is you literally just segued this perfectly. Do they come out of the gates firing? It's kind of what happened with PSG Talent. If you think back, like, Fabian and Pengi go over there. They want to try and revamp the Korean scene a little bit, and obviously PSG Talent, and improve them. They were always that kind of 3rd to 4th team, always a little bit behind the top 2. So they were always kind of poking their head in. I think they made Atlanta, and Fabian comes over and they immediately start performing like almost straight away. And they get up, I think it was like the first 6 months, things looked great for PSG Talent. And it's like, okay, maybe we could have something here. And that was also with, a lot of the issues, I think, when it came to Fabian and PSG Talent, you got communication issues firstly, but also major cultural difference issues that were very much apparent and all to see. And at the end of the day, you can only do so much with kind of what you've got. And naturally, the reality is the Korean region isn't doing so well.
I think that was the big. I think ultimately that was the biggest issue for Fabian. Yes, he had those massive hurdles that you're mentioning, but I feel like they did a pretty decent job in scaling those. Whether or not that was down to a honeymoon period or not, hard to say from an external perspective. But ultimately, the biggest brick wall that they ran into is just a lack of talent in the region. Right? It got to a certain point.
You want to remove someone, who do you go get?
They want to get rid of somebody because it's either lack of performance or bad attitude. I heard instances of both on that team.
Yep.
Who the fuck else do you go to? Because
and they have to speak Korean.
The region already is struggling. You need to find. It's like when you play Football Manager and you need to like scout someone in the middle of fucking nowhere, and your options are incredibly limited. You have to really strike gold in that region, and I think they just ultimately ran out of talent in the end, and there was only so much Fabian could do.
I agree. I I look at that whole project and I think, I mean, if you wanted to put a yes or no, a successful or not successful take on it, obviously the answer is not successful. Didn't work out for all parties involved. And I don't think you can necessarily put it on one person. I think, one thing in sports and esports alike, you kind of look at managers or coaches and it can sometimes be like, no, this guy sucks or whatever. Fabian clearly knows what the fuck he's talking about. Fabian clearly knows like this game and how it needs to be played. And he was heavily involved with that roster, but there's only so much you can do when the other parts of the machine aren't functioning together and you don't have that full package. So I think Fabian will thrive on a team like M80, who I think will be able to respond probably far better to his coaching style. I think that he's also going to be able to just naturally communicate with them a lot better. Even just taking a tech pause, a tack pause, and being able to actually communicate with your roster goes a long way. And I think he'll be able to set up better foundations with M80. But I don't know if Fabian himself is going to be able to take that roster, now minus Spoit, and get them to the promised land. I think it's a good roster, but as we know, like North America hasn't necessarily been looked at as a region that can go and win a major or win an SI. Not at least very recently. So I think that's where North America's probably at. Fabian can maybe try and help that with M80.
I would describe NA as having somewhat similar issues to Korea in the sense that they're struggling to take that next step at the moment, but they have a lot deeper talent pool and a lot more emerging talent that Fabian, I'm sure, can develop this team. And I actually do think this M80 roster could be very, very strong and maybe even a top 4 contender if they play at their very best at this event. I mean, I'll just put that out there. But if it doesn't work out and they maybe need to take a player out or whatever the case may be, there's dozens of players and replacements lining up that are hungry, and that will be good enough to fill that slot.
Well, the team from
Fabian will have a much more enjoyable time in this region.
The team from North America that I've got my eye on is not even at the event. It's Shopify Rebellion.
Shopify, yeah.
I mean, that roster looks absolutely insane. Adding in Spoit, you've got Canadian, who still, is very much, I think, performing good enough that he can compete. How many top 4 finishes have we seen? You think about the run with Dark Zero, Ambi's looking great on that roster as well. So I think for me, that's the team that I've definitely got my eye on. And with Fabian coming to M80, like I think coming into the rest of this year, North America is going to be very, very interesting. Is this the year they can finally take that next step, start competing? Because really for the last year or so, it really was that old Dark Zero roster when Canadian was still on it.
Had Manchester, but it was just a flash in the pan kind of moment, right?
Exactly. So Palu to Loud. Is that, I mean, is that actually confirmed? I mean, I haven't actually seen this updated on Liquipedia yet, so I don't know. I mean, I haven't really kept up with the Twitters or whatever.
I do a typo?
He maybe did a typo. I was like looking at that and thinking,
wait. Let me double check this. Now you got me questioning
well,
myself.
look at this. We do it live. I mean, I'll move on quickly to the next one.
Right. I could edit that out. That's okay.
Virtue to BDS is one that I actually really have my eye on, not just because of Virtue to BDS, but naturally that roster that has been put together. So Robbie has been the talk of the town over the last 12 months, ever since his performances at recent majors, especially in Montreal. He's been someone that from Team Falcons, a roster and a region that doesn't always do that amazingly, has taken them to new heights. Of course, as we know, Falcons, well, are a very different team now with BDS obviously going over to that organization. Robbie had to find a new home. Virtue had to find a new home. And for them to all kind of like get on over to BDS, I find it very intriguing how this roster was put together. Like, I would love to have been a fly on the wall when it comes to this roster because, like, naturally, it's a weird mix. Like, Virtue, Robbie, you got Lasmo, P4, and then Freck from Wild. Freak, sorry. I don't know why I said Freck. Freak. It's a roster that's, for me, in Reload, the one that I'm the most excited about. Like, that's the one that I look at and go, I'm really curious to see how that roster performs. I said Shopify Rebellion as the team I'm probably most excited to see outside of Reload, while BDS is definitely the team I'm most excited to see in Reload.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a mishmash, but the team has so much potential. And I think if Virtue is able to take a bit of a leadership role on that particular roster and He has so much experience at this point in time, and I'm sure he's pretty hungry to keep competing, because in some respects this could maybe be his last opportunity in EU. If this doesn't work out, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to find another home, potentially, especially given some of the strengths in the region at the moment. So yeah, excited to very much see that roster. I don't have expectation on them though. It's not a roster where I'm going in and expecting much from them, but it would definitely be a welcome surprise in my eyes, at least, if they are able to make it through that final bracket. At least. Now, circling back to Palu, yes, it was very much a typo. He is on W7M, not Loud. I don't know how I got the two mixed up, but still an interesting addition nonetheless. Dash taken out, who was their third highest performing player at SI. Palu in, and a player that is very much looking to shake the reputation that he's made for himself in terms of just not being able to perform at the very, 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 very highest level. Always consistent and does well, and has made a great career for himself in doing so. That he's searching for that hammer, and obviously he's not going to get that at Reload. It's still a long path forward for that particular thing to take place. But he joins a W7M roster that has been on the up ever since that EWC loss, and maybe 2025 will be an opportunity for them to be that breakout Brazilian team and overtake FaZe. Do I think that's likely? Probably not, but there's potential, maybe.
I think also circling with Palu and Maya and Team Liquid and the changes that they've made, of course, with him and like Gonas leaving, you've got Diaz and Ask that have made their way in. So, I think Liquid for me has always been a roster that on paper for probably the last 12, 24 months, they've always looked like a team that can contend. They've always relatively done well, but they've just never been able to, kind of go all that way. And I think it's just, one of those situations where time for a change. Palu goes W7M, you bring in Diaz, you bring in Ask, you just try something different. I think there'll be question marks over Ask. I think Diaz is good enough, and I think that rest of that Liquid roster is good enough. That's another one that I've definitely got my eye on going into Reload. And this is kind of like we're talking about in terms of roster moves, right? Like when I said before, is this the biggest shakeup that we've seen in Siege? Like you could look at...
You name one change and then there's like a cascade of about 15 other changes. You can look at
like 80% of the teams at Reload and they've got at least one or two different players. So if anything, you could probably say for the teams that haven't changed really a whole lot, or anything at all for that matter, well, there's a pretty big advantage in that, right? Like we think about, and I've spoken about this a lot when it comes to like, FaZe, for example, really good example, and Furia for that matter too. Like FaZe and Furia have been two teams that have just been so stable. And with that stability, you're going to find success. Both teams have found success. I think that's something that like a lot of teams need to kind of look at. And don't get me wrong, like if you've got to make changes, you've got to make changes. If it's not working, well, sometimes, you do actually need to make some changes. But I look at like, again, I'll use an example. I think Shopify Rebellion have a team that if they stick together over the next 12 to 24 months, they could pull off a major win. That might be a little bit ballsy to say now, because I'm not saying that they're going to go win the next major. But I am saying if they stick at it, and I'm just using them as an example, other teams fit the same criteria, they could win a major. You've got to have stability when you feel like that roster is really set. You keep changing one or two pieces out, after 5 or 6 changes, it's a completely different team. It's the old saying, Guzz, back in the old days when they used to do the ship making, you build a ship, but if you keep replacing each little panel at a time, after 7 years, is it the same ship? Or is it a different ship now? Like that's the way you kind of got to look at some of these rosters and these changes. Like after a while, it's like, well, you keep changing. This one goes out, then this one goes out. After like 5 years, it's a whole new team. So I think that coming into this event, it's exciting. And this is, again, why I'm very much excited for Reload is you've got so many different changes. Julio as well is another one too. His addition to Falcons as, he's labeled as the coach, perfect, is one that like, I'm a little bit disappointed and sad because obviously I felt like he was doing a lot for the guys in APAC. He spent a lot of time on Bleed, ex-Bleed. And I think that his addition actually was at a time that really saw the rise of Southeast Asian Siege and APAC in general. So I'm a little bit sad to kind of lose him to what is already a bit of a powerhouse. But like, is he the difference maker potentially for that roster, ex-BDS, now Falcons, to finally get over that bloody hurdle? Because that's going to be their storyline coming into the 25-26 season. Is can Falcons go and actually get themselves a win? That
Yeah, I'll be
isn't
intrigued.
EWC.
I mean, when I think of Julio, I certainly think of a player that, a coach that probably leans. Again, if you're thinking about coaches, you have some that lean more into strategy, and others that probably lean more in towards the mental performance of the game. At least my external view would be that Julio probably leans a little bit more towards strategy, given his wealth of playing experience. But I guess with that as well would come the ability to have learnt a lot in terms of mental fortitude, and that has been the curse for BDS. Repeated grand final appearances where once they're under the pump, they lose a couple of percentage points in performance. And in that kind of environment, if the other team is firing and confident, that is what loses you the game. BDS probably not, Falcons now, probably not trailing that far in terms of strategy. In fact, probably one of the leading teams, but not being able to connect the dots in terms of confidence and mental inside of the server. So is Julio going to be that glue to bring them together? Potentially. I would imagine that Falcons, again, pretty much with an unlimited budget and would have been able to look at a wide range of coaches, probably had that as a large criteria for the person leading the team. We need somebody who, in these high pressure moments, can ensure that we're calm and ready and can reset and play to the best of our ability, because Falcons at their best without the mental cloud will be very difficult to stop. And if and when they are able to break through that wall that stands in front of them, let's say maybe at Reload, for example, Falcons make it to the grand final, no mental problems, win that particular tournament, I think that sets the red carpet for them to just be able to plow through the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
Like I still think that they would be the hardest team to take down. So
yeah,
we'll wait and see. But Julio, as an addition to that roster, is an exciting prospect, and I'm intrigued to see just how much of a change it will actually have, and if that will be immediate.
I always love when I do this on the podcast, guys. I go a little bit off script here, and I bring a topic up that we either didn't talk about beforehand or wrote down. So now you get to just kind of see what's about to come out of my mouth, along with everyone else. Is the nature of a partner invite tournament means you're going to get some teams that, quite frankly, I don't know would they actually qualify for a major, right? Like, are they actually good enough? And I've got 4 teams. Yes, I've got 4 teams. 4 teams that I want to kind of quickly talk about here before we move on to the next topic. Well, not quickly. We can spend some time here. No rush. So I've got Wildcard. I've got Loud, Fnatic, and Elevate. Are the 4 teams that I've kind of looked at and gone and said, would they make a major as the current rosters? And do they really deserve to be at an event such as this? Because either it's like a newly constructed team, or maybe they're just straight up not good enough. So if you look at like Loud as an example, right? Ex-Razar Company, which played at a tournament that you were not part of, Gus, at 6 Invitational. They had a very good run. They finished 6th overall at 6 Invitational. But if you actually dive deeper into their run, they kind of had a little bit of a Cinderella moment, right? Like, they had a group with like PSG Talon, which, by the way, the only game at the entirety of SI for a team that finished 6th that won a best of 3 2-0 was against PSG Talon for Razar Company. Every other game was either a loss or a 2-1. So for me, I look at that and say, well, I think I don't want to say the word lucky, because they actually did play some good Siege, and they certainly surprised, and it was a lot of fun. It's always good when you have like that Cinderella story. But naturally, for me, it felt like the kind of tournament where everything just went perfectly right. They got some good breaks. They won some big 50-50s. You win a 2-1 here and a 2-1 there that maybe could have been a 1-2 here or a 1-2 there. And so that's what I kind of look at for that team. Do I think that they could qualify for a major? Maybe, yeah. I think they could. I mean, there's a reason why Loud has picked up that team, and what a run that they had. Great players. But we're going to have to see if they can back up that performance at SI, because it's a one-off right now. It is a one-off, and we need to see whether or not they can kind of go and do it again. So Loud, question mark there. Huge organization as well, and welcome into Rainbow Six Siege. But I'm very curious to see the future for that roster. And Reload will give us an answer. Again, Reload, yes, it has all these gimmicks and yes, there's elements to it, but we also get some answers. Like, do Lau just come in and shit the bed and it's like, well, SI was a fluke, or do they continue to perform and maybe even go one better? And it's like, hey, we've actually got a new team from Brazil that can continue to, do some really good things. Wildcard is a roster that, again, made some changes and is a roster that I kind of look at and I'm like, I mean, obviously we don't cast North America, but there is just some names that I just go like, I don't know really who these people are. Spiff, Bosco, both leaving. You think back to the end of last year with Rampy Vertical leaving. So they've gone and picked up Dash, which I kind of like this pickup. I think Dash is a really good player. I think that when you look at the rest of the roster, though, do they make it out of North America, guys? Do they make it out of NA? Probably not.
Not ahead of a Shopify, no.
No. And I think that's what I kind of look at and say, well, here is your chance. If you're wildcard as a partner team, you get a free shot. Literally a free shot to see if you can perform with other top teams. So I'm curious to see how wildcard's going to perform with that newly built roster. Fnatic is another team as well that has just, I think, last 5 years, have they really been relevant, making like big events? Hell no. And obviously they've continued to make changes themselves, but it feels like this is an organization that just continues to make changes for either the sake of changes or they don't really know what they're doing. They go and pick up Groovy and Jaxu. Groovy's the kind of player, I think it was like Groovy and Adrian from like the Secret time were both really good in EUL and then both shit the bed internationally. So I'm curious to see if Groovy can kind of bring some of that EUL performance to Reload. You kind of, again, you look at that roster. Do they make it out of Europe and make it to a major? I don't think so. So, and then another free shot. And lastly, Elevate. Right now, the team we honestly probably love to hate. Let's be honest. They're the bad guys. They are the heel for those who are wrestling fans. Like, they are the heel. They're the bad guys because they gutted their team of APAC almost proverbial legends when you think about guys like Ape and Speakeasy. I know obviously like Shed and MC were the proverbial imports, but like they played to that 2-person import rule fine. Unspoken rule, I should say. And as we know, unspoken rule because we've got 5 Brazilians representing the APAC region. And I think I saw on Twitter, like, there was a comment made that, like, it's not just some random team. Like, these guys are good. You got some players from, like, we got one from NIP, Academy, a W7M Academy graduate, MIBR. And, of course, Elevate had a Brazilian Academy team. So there has been thought put into this, I will say, but I hate it. Absolutely hate it. You have an 8-pack team that is full of Brazilians. And again, I don't actually know whether or not those Brazilians would even make it out of APAC. We will see. But as it stands, I think there are better teams in APAC than that Elevate roster. So therefore, I don't think they would make a major. So those are the 4 teams.
My expectations are pretty rock bottom for that team.
Yeah. Those are the 4 teams I look at that are in this tournament as partner teams because of the organizations that I don't know if they've got rosters that are actually good enough to make major events. Do you have any rebuttals on any of those rosters, any of those teams?
No, not particularly. I mean, one that stands out to me is maybe being a little... I mean, Team Secret is a very strange amalgamation, but I feel like they have strengths. Cloud9 for me as well is one that...
you got to back in Dream. And I mean,
I love Dream is a very likable guy and a very good player.
I've got a back in Dream,
great, so
and I think
they'd be on the fringe. They'd be on the competing. They wouldn't make it for free, but
I still rate Kobe. I still rate Kobe Lax. And we were obviously there in Montreal when he was copying a lot of heat.
Time of things.
He copped a lot of heat, and he wasn't given much time. And I think at the time he was like an 18-year-old entry fragger. Like, give the kid a break. You know what I mean? Like, I know that we're critics at heart, especially as commentators. That's part of our job to be both positive and negative. But I just felt like he copped it a little too much. I'm very curious to see how he goes on that roster. I think they're going to have good vibes.
And he's so young. So
yeah.
I think that team has a lot of potential.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think you could put them into that category of like, would they actually make it out of North America and qualify for a major? Yeah, they'd be on that fringe. They'd be on the cusp. They'd be fighting, you know. But I think that that's definitely one team I look at and go, I think there's some good potential there for sure. But I think the 4 teams that I listed, I know you mentioned Secret, but I think there's still some really, really good quality there. Joom, Adrian, Mowgli, keen to see how that goes. Noah. I think there's enough on that Secret roster. Again, you could pose the same question to them. And I don't think that Secret roster is a guarantee to make a major, but they would certainly be more in line and more in the conversation than a couple of others. And then the rest of the teams, quite frankly, are teams that are good enough to qualify within their regions. I'm saying it's okay. Again, it's not a guarantee, but I think they're all good enough then to qualify anyway in their regions. So if I'm picking like 4 teams that I'm pretty confident on, and then we're kind of like spitballing on maybe 2 others, that's not too bad. You know, again, this is where it's not a full Mickey Mouse tournament where you've got like 10, 12 teams that just are not top teams. You maybe got 4.
Yeah.
You know? So, and again, I look at it, if you want to look at it from the positive side of things, it's a really good opportunity for those teams specifically that I mentioned to prove themselves at an event like this, because it's a global LAN and you're playing against the best of the best in the world. So I think naturally, like, you've got to look at it from that positive spin. It's a really good experience as well for those teams to take back going into stage 1, right? That's absolutely huge. So again, like this is where I get excited. This is where I get excited going into a new event, because like there's questions and we need answers. And I think Siege is at its best when we have questions. If it's all just like, oh, it's Fury and FaZe again and Falcons XBDS, whoopee, there's 3 of your top 4. We've seen this before. I want to see I want to see some new storylines. I want to see questions. I want to see, you know, in stage 1 onwards, can Shopify make a good run? What's this M80 team going to look like? You know, like I want to see these kind of things. North America is the big question mark, I think, for 25-26. That's my big takeaway. And I think also, now tying into the next kind of topic, the expectations for Siege X as an esport title. Like that's the biggest question of them all. Coming into not just Reload, but the 25-26 campaign for Siege Esports, what the hell are we expecting from Siege X for our esport? Does it change much up at all, do you think?
That's a very big question.
The thing.
Jake. Jesus.
Is it going to...
From all angles.
Well, is it going to... Like, the elements that are coming in, you know, because obviously, like, the big nature of Siege X is, like, you know, the look and feel of the game and all of those kind of things. But, like, the element changes, like the rappel, for example, what they can now do maybe with new operators, things like that. Do we see Siege fundamentally change because of Siege X? Or in 6 months' time, are we just loading into another match and we're not really seeing, say, at an esport level, that much of a difference?
I think it's inevitable that we'll see some meta shifts, especially pending any balancing changes that are on the cards as well. That's just the nature of the game, and it always has been. I guess honing in on any of the specific changes themselves. The environmental aspects will add some flair, but I don't think they're going to be a major influence. Repelling will make attacking perhaps a little bit more aggressive and comfortable on Windows, and that will be a little bit more app specific. You think about like a cafe, for example, that's going to open up a lot more for the attack compared to now where it's really cumbersome. I don't think it's going to be a major dramatic change. To be honest, when you posed the question, I wasn't even really thinking about it from strictly a gameplay perspective. It was more so the business perspective, right? Is it going to help the game do better, or at least continue on its same trajectory of doing well? And how will that influence the esports system or Ubisoft more broadly? Because again, taking into consideration that Ubisoft more broadly as a company has not been doing particularly great over the last decade or so outside of Siege. So Siege X, if it is successful commercially, then that success should filter down into the esport. What that actually looks like, I have no idea and can't make any promises, but on my wish list would probably be, you know, maybe an additional major a year, or better structuring and funding of the regional leagues, or some positive influence to you know, help us out. But I'm not too uncomfortable about the future of the game or Siege as an esports title. I think we're going to definitely be here for at least another 5 years, and I'm pretty confident in 10.
Yeah. I guess the answer then to the kind of question that was posed is probably not going to see a huge difference just from Siege X.
I mean, it wasn't marketed as being a huge difference.
No, not at all.
I don't think it should be a huge difference. Like,
no,
we'll see a couple of minor gameplay elements refined, and I think that is going to change things a little bit, but it's not going to be. You're not going to be loading. You're not going to be tuning in to reload and be like mind blown.
Well, this is actually
you've never seen this before.
This is the thing as well. It's like, should Siege X have made a bigger difference and change to the Siege, again, esports landscape? I'm not talking about your casual and comp games. I'm just like the way that it would trickle down. And because at the end of the day, this is about the esports side of things. Should the introduction of Siege X and the changes that had come with it, should it have actually made more changes that would have changed the esport, or do you think it's actually in a good enough spot that you can keep the stability of what we've got is good? We don't need to tinker with what's working.
You're talking about like the game or the
I'm talking about I'm talking about the game. The format's irrelevant.
I mean, I think the game's at a very good spot, and I think most would agree that at the highest level, the game is in a very strong spot in terms of.
So it didn't need a big shake-up anyway. It didn't need a big shake-up.
I don't think so. I don't think.
I will give you a good example of Counter-Strike 2's big shake-up was things like nades blowing smokes. Massive change. It doesn't seem like a lot on paper. It's literally just like probably one line. Frags now blow smoke. But it changes quite a lot.
I think it was a bit more than. I think it was a little bit more than that.
It was.
Sure.
They had a whole video on it. But like, what I mean is something like that was introduced specifically into the game that, of course, went in with all of the graphical changes and things like that. But from a gameplay perspective, it was like, here's CS2. Here's a pretty big change. That again,
I feel like
the core
CS is
the core aspect hasn't changed.
A lot more delicate. CS is a lot more delicate though, right? Like, what if they added destructible environment?
Yes, that's like that's what I'm talking.
If they added that to Counter-Strike, that would be.
Well, I'm talking about like I'm saying like
people would blow their mind, but in Siege, it's just like I mean, it's cool, but it's not gonna be that big.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like in Siege, if you wanted to go and say, you know what, let's really fuck with shit, like
it'd have to be dramatic.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
massive. Did
we think that was needed? Did we need something similar to like, okay, this now does this? Oh my god, like frags blow smokes, or like. So I didn't think we needed anything, but I also, again, because like I wasn't included on anything with CJX, I was actually anticipating a little bit more of a shake-up to the gameplay. I thought that there would be something that I go like, oh, that's going to change things, but there really wasn't. Again, I think probably the repelling actually might be one of the bigger things. There's some destructible environment that changes, but largely, not much I'm expecting. And I would hope that, like, I think they actually said that CJX is not like a back end thing. Like, like a lot of people were saying, oh, with the introduction of CJX, you can now code things better or whatever. Didn't they come out and say that wasn't like really a big part of it?
I don't know.
Okay, cool.
I think they may have clarified that it's not on a new engine.
Yeah,
again,
that's what I'm thinking.
Engines are constantly updated. Everything in the back end is constantly updated. Like, just because they don't say it.
That's true.
So
that's true.
But it did seem to be far more. Whilst it didn't have huge, massive gameplay changes, or at least not what we think to be massive gameplay changes, it also wasn't as back end focused as Health, which was pretty much not player facing.
Do we get to a point though in 12 months time, maybe 24, 18, whatever, where we go, was the Siege X update really that significant enough to have garnered the attention that it has gotten? Like, at what point do you also, like, do you just drop Siege X after next year? Like, did we just go back to Siege?
I have no idea what the Ford, what the Ford branding is.
Because, like, the way I look at it again, and I'll keep using Counter-Strike as reference point because they're, like, one of the biggest titles that most recently did, like, a go to 2, etc., is it's a clear cut. Here's go, here is 2. We are moving forward with 2. Go is left behind. I feel like, for me, it's like, well, what are we doing with Siege? Because it's like, we've got Siege X. Are we Siege X forever now? Have we really changed enough to be considered a whole new title name? And then in 12 months' time, if you drop the X, is it just like, okay, the lighting's a little better and things are a bit more prettier? Is that it? Like, I don't know. I don't know. So that's why, like, I'm very curious, because we're going to really get to see it for the first time played at the esport level for Reload into the year as well to come. That's why I kind of added this in as like, what are our expectations? And if it really is not much, well, then it goes back to that. It goes to that next question: is then what really was the point of all of this? You know, that might seem a little bit doomy, but like, yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. I'm just like everyone else. I really just do not know. We'll look to wrap things up because we're getting towards the hour mark. We've got our Reload predictions, Guzz, which we've done separately. We haven't actually coordinated this. If you want, you can get yours up first. Obviously, I'm going to send you mine after the fact, so I'm sure in post-editing you'll put them up together. But if you want to go through the list of teams that you've got making it through to the playoffs, finals, I can't remember what they're calling it.
Yeah, finals.
Finals.
So 8 of the 20 teams make it through to that final bracket, and in no particular order, I have listed Dark Zero.
Okay, definitely
FaZe
no order.
Clan. Definitely not. Yeah, Dark Zero, FaZe Clan, Furia, SSG, Falcons, W7M, M80, and G2.
Okay. So I think looking at mine, I think we actually have two differences. I haven't gone with SSG and I haven't gone with G2. I've gone with Team BDS to scrape in.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily do mine in full order, but I did kind of have in mind that they would scrape in. I do like the look of that roster. I think that for me, they're a little bit of that dark horse mentality coming in. If it all kind of clicks, I think they could do well. Did you have M80?
I did.
Okay. Dark Zero?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out this other team because I've got remaining Liquid, W7M, Furia, Falcons, and FaZe Clan.
I didn't have Liquid.
Didn't have Liquid. Okay.
No Liquid.
I like the Diaz inclusion. I think that Ask is the question mark, which is kind of funny. Ask what's going on. And I think the rest of that team is still, when you think about like Maya, Nesk, resets, there's enough there that I think they could definitely get in. Again, it's not really in order. Like, I don't know, they might finish 8th, 7th, or whatever. And what did you have? G2.
G2 is a scrape for me. I really don't know. G2 could be absolutely horrible, or they could connect. I found it very difficult to put them in.
What was the other one that you had as well? You had G2 and someone else that...
SSG, was it?
SSG. Yeah, SSG.
I'm a big believer in SSG.
I would say if we would have bundled the 4 that we were impartial on, SSG would be at the top of that list. I could probably give you that one. But I think like SSG, BDS, M80, G2, for me, those 4, 2 from you, 2 from me. Yeah, it's like kind of like who scrapes through. The rest of them though, the 6 that we both went with is I think also just kind of a follow on from last year's esports ecosystem and landscape. And it's like, we're just expecting those teams either haven't made roster changes or very little roster changes and have been performing really well. The expectation is in a tournament, coming into a tournament with a lot of instability for teams, they should prevail. And that's kind of my thinking with those selections. I would imagine you're probably similar in that boat.
Yeah. I think our most notable exclusion then, just having a look through the teams, is probably Secret, to be honest. I didn't anticipate either of us to have any APAC teams, and I think that's justified. You could maybe see it like a CAG sneak through, but it's doubtful. Outside of that, probably Secret would have been who I would have exchanged for G2. It was a tough one.
I'd say they're in that 4, now 5 team bracket, right? Where it's like, I mean, who knows? Especially with the format.
Pull one out of a hat.
With the format, I don't know. Maybe G2 and Secret end up in a 1v1 to decide who goes to the final A. I don't know what's going to happen, right? So, I mean, I think from the gist of it, I think we're pretty in line for the most part with the predictions. We'll look to close up with really, I guess, because obviously we're going to be heading off to Brazil. I'm not too sure if we're going to be able to get content while we're over there. It's definitely something that we're trying to see if we can workshop. It's really just more of a equipment, logistical kind of issue. We will 100% do a recap when we get back. And then obviously we've got stage 1 kind of around the corner at that point when we kind of get back. Any expectations, exciting times ahead for, stage 1, stage 2, the next major, SI, etc.? You're looking forward to just kind of getting back into the Siege mindset. We've had a good spell.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying before, I have not casted outside of like a couple rec days for like 6-ish months since Montreal semis. So it's been a long time, quite a stressful time for a number of reasons. Also I feel like I've been sick about 3 times in the last month or 2. I'm still
get it out of the way.
Trying to get over this cough. You could probably see me coughing multiple times over the course of this episode. But I'll be good by the time we leave. So I'm just excited to get out there, obviously see everybody again. Brazil, Sao Paulo was pretty cool last time. Excited to explore Rio as well. Really cool place. So yeah, and I guess on top of that as well, one thing that we haven't even mentioned is the crowd in Brazil. Really, obviously, fingers crossed, a couple of the Brazilian teams do well to really bolster that. And
Brazil versus non-Brazil this time.
Yes, and that'd be crazy. Imagine being the non-Brazilian team walking out to that crowd. That would be incredible for the grand final or even a semi. So yeah, really excited for that. The energy from the fans over there is fucking crazy. So it should be a really fun event, and fingers crossed the Reload to Survive or the group stage is not utter bullshit. Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much excited, and I think that we've obviously been in that off season, so coming out of that off season now with Reload, kind of again kicking things off, builds up those excitement levels that I really hope the event doesn't fall flat. I'm really hoping that it's just going to be fun, exciting. Everyone has a good time. We get some really good games. We get a good crowd atmosphere. We can kind of walk away from the tournament with more people excited for Siege Esports to come in 25 and 26 than say, maybe losing a little bit of that excitement. So that's kind of my hope. And I think that's where some of the hesitation with the format and all of those things come into play. It's like, I really hope this works, because if it doesn't, you might then lose some people for the remainder of the year. Probably not, because I think most people just know, well, it's not going to be like this again anyway. If it doesn't work, that is. So there's obviously really good excitement levels coming into Reload, but then also like stage 1, stage 2 onwards with all these new rosters that we've kind of touched on a few of them. And that's just really the partner teams that we've spoken about, plus like SR. There's so many other teams. And even within our own region with like Oceania and the changes that have come through in our own region is quite massive. And we'll touch on all of that probably going into like a stage 1 preview, where it at this point it might end up being either a 2-parter or a 5-hour episode. We'll have to honestly do like probably two different episodes for that one. But big thank you to everyone who has made it this far in the episode, for watching, tuning in. Really hope you obviously appreciate our candidness, honesty with formats and team expectations, and our thoughts on roster changes, all of those things. We always strive to just be as impartial, as honest, as candid as we possibly can when it comes to these episodes, and give you guys a really good insight into what we think of really the entire ecosystem when it comes to Siege Esports. If you appreciate that, let us know in the comments. Like, just a little drop in the comments saying, hey, we love you guys. Even a like, give us a like, a thumbs up, you know what I mean? Subscribe, all of those things absolutely would mean the world of us. Again, as always, we've got our Patreon. We're going to be very much active throughout the Reload event, stage 1, etc., all throughout the year. So if you want to come on in, helps, support us. Big thank you to obviously all of our current Patreons. Very much a big reason why we can continue to still do these episodes, and very much looking forward to seeing everyone tune in for Reload. I know, there's mixed energy when it comes to this event, even from us, but we are excited. We hope you're excited. We are looking forward to this event, and a really good way to kick off Siege X and Siege Esports for 2025. So we'll see you in the next episode, and hopefully everything went well.